Hello, viewers. I trust you are well. My name is Dr. Kinyua. Welcome to my channel. Our topic is scenario analysis and planning. Scenario analysis and planning. Scenario analysis and planning is a concept that is used when you are planning for your business, especially so when you are planning, when you're doing long-range planning. When your plans are for long term, let's say 20 years, 15 years, or 50 years, you may want to think about coming up with a scenario plan. What is scenario analysis? Scenario analysis is an objective way of determining which business decision is best and when presented with the multiple choices. So at times you'll be presented with multiple choices and you want to make decision as to the most ideal decision that you can make given the circumstances. And therefore you may need to do some analysis. So scenario analysis will help you to identify the best decision for each future scenario. We know that the future performance of a business may not be guaranteed because there are so many changes that happen in the external environment, and some of these changes are very uncertain. You never know what will happen 2 years from today. And what is scenario planning? Scenario planning, first and foremost, was developed in the 1950s. Some say that it started in the military, but there are other scholars who say that it started in the Shell, Shell company, as a tool for integrating changes and uncertainty in the external context in overall strategy. So wherever it came from, we know that this is a planning tool that can help us to know what we can do in case we are faced with uncertainties, in case we want to plan for long term, and we want to come to think about various scenarios that may happen in the long run and how we are supposed to address any scenario if it arises. So, for instance, in the oil and gas exploration, you may require long-range planning because in oil and gas exploration, these are long-term planning. You may want to plan for 50 years to come, for instance, and that is a long time. It may not be very certain what will happen, and therefore it is imperative that you come up with scenarios that can explain possible outcome in case anything happen in the long term. So the longer the planning horizon, the more uncertain it becomes when you're planning, and therefore it may call for the need of doing scenario planning. So scenarios are therefore complex and dynamic, interactive stories that are told from a future perspective. And to develop useful scenarios, you may need a rich understanding of your industry. You need to understand the industry in which you are operating, along with broad knowledge. You also need to have broad knowledge of the diverse pastel and the global conditions that are most likely to affect your farm. So you need to have this information. You need to understand our industry. We need to understand the global changes and also the pastel of your industry. Scenario planning would enable decision makers to identify ranges of potential outcomes and estimated impacts, and also evaluate responses and manage both positive and negative possibilities. So when we are using scenario planning, it will aid us in identifying ranges of potential outcomes. It will help us in estimating the impact of certain scenario happening, and also evaluate responses that the management may come up with and the possible results, whether positive or negative. So scenario planning is more than just a way to recognize and mitigate risk or plan for a good situation, because it can aid us in visualizing a different representation of an organization future based on the assumptions that we make about the forces driving the market. These forces may have positive or negative repercussion, but we need to know what is driving the industry in which we are operating in. Now, why is scenario planning so important? One is that it can provide a competitive advantage by enabling leaders to react quickly and decisively to any change that may happen in the future or that is going to happen in the long run. Because if something happened and you had pondered about it, then it means that you must have thought about how you are going to address the situation. So when you come up with various scenarios, then it means that you think about how you can address certain changes in the external environment, and it means that you'll be prepared. So the level of preparedness will be enhanced if you are if you're using scenario planning as a tool. So scenario planning also gives the executives and boards of directors a framework to make non-emergency decisions effectively by providing some insight into plans. So you have some insight whenever you are planning, you have thought about the future and the possible occurrences in the future. When you are also coming up with a budget and forecast, scenario planning will give you, will help you in populating and coming up with an ideal budget forecast, because you already have an idea about what is likely to happen in the future. And therefore, scenario planning can help leaders to develop detailed, internally consistent picture of a range of possible outcome as an industry evolves with time. You realize that industry keep on evolving, and as government also bring regulations, firms will try to see how they can be more competitive to address some of the challenges that are in their industry. And therefore, you can incorporate the results of scenario planning into your strategy formulation and implementation. Whenever you are coming out formulating strategy, it means that the results that you have gotten from your scenario planning can be used when you are formulating your strategy and also when you are implementing it. Scenario planning, there is need to understand the external condition. You need to understand the external condition. You need to understand, for instance, the economic condition, the various parameters in the economy, the political changes, and this could be even global political changes, the upheavals that are likely to happen, like now in the year 2022. We have seen how the crude oil prices have gone up because of something happening elsewhere, because of the war happening between Russia and Ukraine. And even though we may not have thought about it, we could have planned for such occurrences, increment in crude oil. For instance, we could have planned, for instance, by employing some strategy like hedging, and that could have it could have given us some advantage, especially if you are in transport industry and you are spending a lot of resources in fuel, like in the case of airline industries. So the purpose of scenario planning is to provide a bigger picture You don't need to have a bigger picture, one in which you can see specific trends and uncertainty happening in the future, so that if we are able to determine, maybe forecast what is likely to happen in the future, then you'll be able to see how you can address the uncertainties. The technique is now regarded as a variable tool for integrating changes and uncertainties in the external context into overall strategy. So this technique is now regarded as a very valuable tool. Even for small firms, you can use scenario planning because you may want to predict what is likely to happen so that you can increase the level of your preparedness. So unlike forecasting, scenarios are not straightforward. They're not straight line, for instance. They are not a one-factor projection from the present to the future. Rather, they are very complex. They can be very complex because this is not something that you know will happen in, you are certain that it will happen. So it may amount to giving, for instance, interactive stories from the future perspective. What is likely to happen in the future? And therefore, you may come up with a number of scenarios. There are various types of scenario planning. One is quantitative scenarios. And these are financial models that can allow you to make presentation on, for instance, the best and worst case scenario of the model output. So you can use quantitative scenarios. And these could be models that, mathematical models, for instance, that you can use to predict what will happen. For instance, we have maybe regression model. You can have financial models that you can use to make some prediction. So they are used to develop annual business forecasts, for instance, and they can come in handy in preparing for the future. Number two scenario is operational scenarios. And these are one of the most commonly used scenarios in planning in various organizations. And operational scenarios help in exploring the immediate impact of an event. In case an event occurs, what would be the impact and how are we supposed to manage it from that from that perspective. So operational scenarios then provide short-term strategic implication. Number three is the normative scenarios. Normative scenarios describe a preferred or achievable end state. It's like a suggestion that something may happen in the future. So they are less objective planning and they are more geared toward the statement of goals. For instance, if you have set long-term goals, it's like you are suggesting that if something happened, then you'll be able to accomplish some of those goals in case the assumptions are not affected or do not change. Because normally you base your projection on certain assumption, could be economic parameters, could be the level of GDP, the level of unemployment, interest rates, name them. So you base your planning on many things that are likely to happen in the external environment, and therefore you make assumptions that if everything goes according to our assumption, then we are able to accomplish certain goals. So it guides how the firm would like to operate in the future. Number four is the strategic management scenarios. And these are essential stories that may postulate more about the environment in which products and services are consumed. So you are trying to, for instance, understand how the consumer buying behavior will change in the future, and how you're supposed to also make amendment to your production so that you can meet the need of your customers. So they require a broad industry, economic and world view. So you may need to have a broad industry view, the economic and world view, for you to do a good scenario on this, to do a good strategic management scenario. So on the plus side, they give the planners freedom to brainstorm and have a broad storytelling mandate. How to use scenario planning? First and foremost, you needed to have macroeconomic expectation. You needed to understand the macroeconomic. You needed to stipulate your expectation. How is the macro environment, for instance, going to change in the future? So we need to be able to project that, and we need to have expectation of what is likely to happen. And this is used in conjunction with the scenario planning in order to help the managers frame near-term expectation for the company and to level set expectations in their departments. The fundamentals of scenario planning are normally the same, even if the particulars across industries and within the industries will vary, but the fundamentals are normally the same. For instance, how did COVID-19 pandemic impact in your industry? I believe not many firms had thought that COVID-19 would impact. But now, having gone through several waves, you'll be able to plan for it. For instance, now we are being told about the 7th wave, and many organizations now are able to plan for it because it's something that has already occurred, and we know how we can manage and how we can go through it. Now, there is a difference between scenario planning and business continuity. And at times, managers confuse the two. So I want to give a difference between scenario planning and business continuity. So scenario planning is, you should not confuse scenario planning with the business continuity. While both are structured processes for helping company to navigate the future, scenario planning ordinarily plays a longer game that consider revenue over time. So it's a long-term planning. Scenario planning is a long-term planning, whereas business continuity planning is about how your business will react to certain uncertainties, like maybe some disaster happening in the economy, in the industry, such as maybe in case a warehouse fire happened, but some pandemic or earthquake. How are you going to address it? So that is business continuity. Steps, basic steps of scenario planning. I now want to take you through the various steps when you are planning to do this kind of planning. It's scenario planning. Step number 1, you need to choose the targets. You need to also choose the scope and time frame that the scenario will explore. So you need to target the issue. Which issue do you want to address? And what is the scope of the same, and what is the time frame? Because we have said that the time frame may vary from 2 years to 50 or more years. So the scope will depend on your level of analysis. For instance, you may need to undertake industry analysis, or you may want to do some industry analysis, or you may want to analyze a strategic group within an industry. So the stage of planning and the nature and degree of uncertainty and the rate of change will differ. And this, you need to therefore determine the scope, the time, and what you are targeting. What is the targeted issue that you want to plan around? Number two, you need to sit down with other managers and do brainstorming. You need to brainstorm a set of key drivers and decision factors that are likely to influence the scenario. So that means that when you bring your heads together and you thought about something, you are likely to go deeper, and you are likely to even cover a wider scope. And therefore, brainstorming will help us in determining the drivers that are making the industry to change and the decision factors that can influence the scenario. Step number three, you need to define the two dimensions of the greatest uncertainty. It means that you need to come up with the X and Y axis by determining two dimensions of uncertainties that you want to analyze. Step number four, you need to detail the four quadrants of the scenarios with the stories. That means that you need to come up with, for instance, a 2x2 matrix or four quadrants. And in every quadrant, you look at the dimensions and you populate those quadrants with possible scenarios, possible activities that may happen in the future, possible events that may happen, and how this may impact on your business. So you need to do it for the four quadrants so that you get to have a view of the various scenarios. So you can have many scenarios within one quadrant. Step number five, you need to identify indicators that could signal which scenarios is unfolding. How are you going to know that a particular scenario is now unfolding? So you need to have indicators that can help the management to know that now a certain scenario is happening. For instance, if you have chosen one of the indicators to be the level of unemployment, when the level of unemployment go very high, you'll be able to, for instance, know that the gross domestic product, for instance, is going down, and your business is likely to be impacted negatively by low purchasing power. So these can either be trigger points that can signal the change that is taking place, or milestones that means the change is more likely to happen. And step number six, you need to assess the strategic implication of each scenario. How will this scenario, if they do happen, how are they going to impact on the performance of the firm? So micro scenarios may be developed to highlight and address business unit specific or industry segment specific issues. You may also want to consider needed variation in strategies. Which kind of strategies are you going to employ to address those occurrences? And you need to think about key success factors and the development of flexible, robust strategy that might occur across several scenarios. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. If you use business canvas model or BMC, it can help entrepreneurs and even large organizations. Like we have given examples of oil and gas exploration company that may want to to plan for long range, to do long range planning, and it will help us to understand what is likely to happen, and therefore this will enhance our level of preparedness. Thank you and God bless. Remember to click the right button. Also make a comment so that next time we will be able to improve on the areas that you comment about. And remember to subscribe to be able to get the episode that is coming up. Thank you and God bless.